Hi, I'm Ven. Welcome to my book corner. Today we're looking at book 1 in the Contender Series, and that is The Chosen by Taran Mataru. This came out in 2019 and is book 1 of a trilogy. As always, we're going to touch on the story, the characters, the world building, the presentation, and my final thoughts at the end. So let's just rifle straight into this one. Best way to describe this is a survivor story, kind of. It reminds me very much of the sort of vibes you get from things like The Hunger Games, Divergent, Maze Runner, where a group of young people are put through their paces in basically almost to survive to the death for one reason or another. Now, what makes this slightly different is that the characters in this don't actually know why they're there. So the main character for this is Cade Carter, and he is a reasonably well-educated young man. However, he was accused of theft, stealing a large amount of laptops, and has been sent to a boarding school for boys to help rehabilitate him. And this boarding school is full of offenders of one reason or another, arsonists, possible murderers, you know, the normal sort of thing. And because he's educated, he kind of sticks out like a sore thumb, or at least that's the way he appears, along with a couple of others, and he gets quite badly bullied for this. Then he just wakes up on the side of a mountain in the middle of a desert and almost gets eaten by an alien dog creature. And from there, the story sort of follows where I'm at, what's going on. He meets up with some of the people from his school. They find various different remnants that feel like they've been plucked from ancient Earth. Eventually they find a native ecosystem, but it seems to be populated again by things that are either pulled directly from Earth's past, like the dinosaurs, or things that have evolved naturally in this environment from the creatures that have been plucked, as well as various other sort of remnants, like there's an old diesel-powered boat, there's a corpse, someone carrying a collection of samurai swords, so on and so forth. One of the missing Mayan cities is also in this random caldera. On top of all that, they've also discovered like a floating drone, for want of a better word, which is counting down. And they've asked the drone various questions, and sometimes it will answer them. Sometimes it deflects, basically just saying, needs clear qualifying round first. Needs clear qualifying round first. Group gets split up, and Cade actually meets another person who's deaf but has been there for quite a while. Appears to be Roman legionary. And this obviously creates more questions than you'd expect. And then he also finds or gets captured and discovers a group of young women who were part of a 1980s British hockey team. Eventually, all the disparate groups come together, and it's decided that what they need to do after consulting with what little the drone would give them is they need to be in the fort at a given time, and that's as much information as they've got, and they figure out that basically they've got to protect the besieged fort. They don't get any confirmation of any of this though, and you then have the final showdown with the space dog alligator monster things, whatever they are. Obviously, with this being a trilogy, they win, and then you have a reveal at the end. What makes this an interesting setup in itself is the fact that at no point do you get any answers during the actual story, you just get more questions. With a lot of the other sort of survivalist young adult books, they know what they're getting themselves into, or at least they have an idea, whereas in this, it's let's just drop you here and see how you do. And from that point of view, it's actually quite good. But there are some issues, and we'll get into that when I touch on characters. Main character is Cade Carter, and in the nicest way possible, he is like paint. He is not especially interesting, and as he is our point of view character, as he's very much the main protagonist of the series from what I can tell, he doesn't come across as especially great, which may be the point. He's obviously smart, and his ability is more his ability to work his way through things. So he's not the strongest. He's not particularly prone to violence. He's not especially well liked either. You get the impression, obviously, from the group that they meet up with, that he's kind of the awkward kid that's tried to be avoided. And as we go through the whole situations that he goes through, specifically as he gets broken up from the group, I don't buy the fact that he will survive most of the encounters he gets through. The very first one, he gets lucky and manages to stab one of the monsters in the neck with a sharp rock. Pure luck, fine. And nearly every situation past that, there's some form of intervention, be it from another character or just a happy coincidence. And he doesn't come across as competent. He's not stupid by any stretch of the imagination. And he does actually use some of his education to help with some of the ideas in the final battle, and some of them are quite good ideas. But you don't buy that he'd survive in the jungle that he ends up in. The rest of the characters, for the most part, you don't get a great deal of characterization. You get the evil, nasty, cruel bully who sort of just hits people and people are afraid of, so they follow him. You get the quiet person with the sort of dark secret in the past. Turns out he accidentally killed his best friend. You have the nerdy kid. You have the strong female lead who's a group in charge of like a small group of girls, and very much you get like almost like an e-girls idea, and you have some interesting interplay there because they're from the 80s and Carter's from, you know, around about our time, and the difference in technology. So there's a few comments in here, like he mentions Google and they look at him like he's gone mad, and that's quite well done. But overall, the characterization, well, it's not bad. It suffers from a poor lead character, in my opinion, or at least a boring one. World building then, and much like the character work, what's here isn't bad, but I feel like it should be far more interesting than it is. Now, there's a couple of different reasons why it suffers a little bit. Part of it is because we're looking at it from the point of view of vanilla in Cade, but there's a lot of disparate elements in the world that's being described, so you get a good sense of the world they came from in terms of how the boarding school life was and how everything worked there. That's well done, and it helps inform the dynamics of the group later on in the book. And you have some good descriptive work of people who don't know what they're looking at in a lot of cases, or at least are working on what you can best describe as a limited amount of information. So there's good descriptive work of what they're finding, of the environments, of the wonder that they're seeing, and none of it makes sense, and that's perfectly fine. You get some good contrast with the drone to the ancient fort it's found in the way it works and disappears and follows round. And that's actually really, really solid, but it's just missing some kind of spark here, because basically what you have is you have an ancient Roman style fort backing into a massive volcanic caldera into basically the lost world. You have dinosaurs stomping through the ground. You have these weird monstrosities as well that don't quite seem like they belong. You've got lost temples from Central America. You have various different bits of technology strewn around as well. And this feels like it should be really, really interesting. And it kind of just goes by in a blur. Nothing here is done badly by any stretch of the imagination, but it almost feels sanitized, for want of a better word, which is a shame. It's almost like the book needed a little bit more room to breathe. Nothing bad here whatsoever, but for all the stuff that's there, this really does seem to lack a bit of the wow factor that it probably should have. That brings me to presentation, and the writing style is perfectly fine. Especially in the first half of the book, I felt quite engaged in the story that this was trying to tell me. The further in I got, the less I bought the protagonist as being capable of what was achieving, however. But at no point was there any bad writing in here. The characters are all done competently. Everything is done to a decent standard. It just lacks a bit of sparkle and pizzazz. I also want to talk about the front cover, because the impression I got off the front cover was I was getting samurais versus dinosaurs, and you do get somebody with a samurai sword fighting dinosaurs at one point, but that's not the whole book, and really the dinosaurs are quite a minor part of the book. Really, they're almost like set dressing. It's a decent looking cover, I just don't think it quite catches what this book is about. But overall, it's well written, it's well plotted. The last act seems a little bit rushed, but again, with the preparation that goes on before, I can kind of forgive that. I do kind of like the reveal at the end, because it's not totally clear still what they're dealing with. We don't really get any massive answers at the end of this. You get hints, but that's it. And without spoiling anything, those hints could lead to something much, much better in the following books. Again, as with most of this book, it's solid, just not spectacular. Final thoughts then, and this book's fine, which sounds like a bit of a damning indictment, really, and it kind of is. I want this book to be better than it is, because there's an interesting conceit here in that these people are scooped up with no idea of what's going on, rather than having the pre-existing knowledge that quite often in these sort of YA survivor style books, they quite often have an idea what they're going into. Here they don't, and that in itself is quite interesting, and there is a sort of mystery aspect on how they got here, which does have a semi-reveal at the end. I don't completely trust the reveal that you get, however, not just yet anyway. But the characters are done okay to good. The world building is okay to good. The pacing is perfectly fine. The plotting is fine. The story is decent, but it lacks pizzazz from start to finish. This is a world that should, because of it very much going into a lost world situation here, and that should awe you with wonder, and it doesn't. It just feels a bit blur. It's almost like you've gone to someone's house and they've offered you a plate of biscuits, and every biscuit there is rich tea, and then they've not given you a drink to go with it, to give you the most British analogy possible. So overall, this gets a C from me. I might still check out the other ones though, because there's enough in the reveal at the end to make me vaguely curious and hopeful that I'll see better world building after this. But we'll see. Have you read this though? What did you think? Let me know in the comments below. I'll catch you next time.